Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is André Gremillet, who serves as the president and CEO of the Cleveland Orchestra. André, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Great to be here.
So I am so excited to talk to you. Obviously, the Cleveland Orchestra, right, stands at the forefront of just our field in so many ways, artistically, the impact not only for, the region, but also nationally and internationally, in terms of the impact of the orchestra. But with that said, there are always interesting and new things that you are doing and with your leadership and at the orchestra. And there is what is relatively recent, an Opera and Humanities Festival. And so, of course, that is a bit atypical for some orchestras. So wondering if you could share with us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And it's interesting the way you framed this introduction, talking about the local and global impacts of the orchestra, because this is very much what this festival is about. For many years, the Cleveland Orchestra, prior to my arrival, was presenting an opera in Cleveland, sometimes stage, sometimes semi-stage, and clearly a very big artistic endeavor, very much appreciated by the Cleveland audiences, but also people coming from New York and Toronto, because of the orchestra and the singers. And after I saw a few editions, I really felt that we could make more of this, really make it more of an event and make it perhaps even more relevant to the Cleveland community. And, it took a few years to plan all of this and, of course, get the funding, which is always necessary for all of these ideas.
Oh,
But we did it and really created 3 years ago. So this year will be the third edition, the Mandel Opera and Humanities Festival, where we start with the music. This is who we are. So it's always, we pick an opera, Franz Verzumers, our music director, picks the opera for musical reasons. And out of this opera, we choose a theme that we think is going to be relevant to our community, to the world at large, and basically utilize our platform to create some conversation, some reflection around the opera and this theme in particular. So the first year was the American Dream, a very small topic, where the opera was Fanciulla del West by Puccini. And we explore the American dream, what it is, what it isn't, where it falls short, where it is really meaningful because it's real, but it's not real for everyone in the same way. So this is not meant in any way to tell people what to think. All we want to do is to stimulate interesting conversation, reflection, and really have something where the whole community in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio feel that this is their festival. And so music is, of course, front and center with the opera, with some concerts, but not just classical music. For example, this year, as part of this year's festival with the theme Reconciliation around the opera by Janacek Yenufa, we'll have a jazz concert by the amazing Chucho Valdés, who will be coming here with his quartet and will perform his music. So really thinking big, if you will, in terms of the impact that this can have for our community.
it's absolutely fantastic, right? And kind of really goes to, right, these discussions that so many have had in the field, so many who are in our audience, who are at their respective arts organizations, especially, who are thinking about how are we relevant to our community, right? How are we utilizing this artistic craft that we have, but to connect and have potentially broader conversations. And wondering kind of as you go into this and say, for example, going into reconciliation, are there goals that you have kind of outcomes from that, or goals in terms of how the community may ultimately view or engage with reconciliation? Just kind of wondering, how does the theme kind of relate to kind of, are there key outcomes you strive for or that the artists who are involved strive for?
Absolutely. I would say it really is about, very much the way we approach our music making, which is you don't want to tell people what to feel or how to experience the music, but like all great art forms, hopefully people leave a performance perhaps thinking about that music, perhaps thinking about an element slightly differently, and that's what we strive for. And we approach it from different angles and with partners. That's very important. We're the Cleveland Orchestra. We're not a university. We're not philosophers. So we collaborate with the right people. For example, we'll have the Moth main stage will be coming to Cleveland to launch this event where you will have 5 storytellers telling personal stories about reconciliation that will, of course, resonate with people here or people, traveling here to see that. We will have an exhibit curated by a young Clevelander, Toussaint Miller, who did that last year with an exhibit by Chuck Stewart, the wonderful photographer. Really, last year was about the power of the visuals as it relates to all these wonderful jazz musicians that Mr. Stewart, among others, photographed. This year we'll have some Cleveland-based artists who will reflect the rich, diversity of the city and around the theme of reconciliation. So we come at it from different angles, and hopefully people leave, again, perhaps thinking about things that they may not have been thinking about before. Certainly that happens to us as we put this together.
I love that, and especially the breadth of it, and bringing in the storytelling and spoken word and visual art. So it almost seems like it's designed to kind of envelop artistically around this issue, and in particular, this focus on reconciliation, which of course I think is very timely, no matter what, spectrum people are at in
Mhm.
terms of politics or whatever. Everyone seems to be in agreement that we're too divisive, and that there's all of these different issues. And so anything that might bring reconciliation or a sense of that between people seems very relevant to so many communities even beyond Cleveland. Uh,
Indeed.
One kind of functional thing too, because I know so many in our audience are engaged, whether as artists with others or administrators, leaders, but you reflected this collaboration. So clearly, right, the partnerships are what build and actually make this happen. And just wondering, kind of administratively, are there any kind of core best practices or things you utilize in approaching partnerships with others when you have a common goal?
It's a great question. I mean, and I should have mentioned, we work with a curator for this festival. So Elena Dubinets, who's based in London, is about to go to Amsterdam, but was in Seattle for many years. She's been working with us now for 3 years, helping us curate that. But a lot of the work happens here locally. The advantage of a city like Cleveland is that it is by definition very collaborative. The way we started this, I just picked up the phone and called all of my colleagues in Cleveland. And all of them, not just, not only answering my call, but, right away, they said, we're in. And that's one of the, every community is different. In some places, it may not be as easy, but that's one of the advantages we have here in our relatively small city that is very proud of its cultural offering. The other piece, Aaron, I would say is, in addition to benefiting from the expertise of our partners, what we bring, one of the goals is to also shine light on Cleveland as a cultural destination, right? I'm not from here, as you can hear from my accent. I'm French Canadian. I lived in Australia. I lived in New York. So I came here, I think, truly objective about what this city is, and I was amazed by the wealth of culture. I knew, of course, the wonderful Cleveland Museum of Art. I knew the orchestra, but besides that, I wasn't really aware of everything that city had to offer. So I do think that there's a very pragmatic piece that we're trying to achieve here, which is how do we promote Cleveland as the great cultural center it is in our country. And I really believe that. And so that's part of, again, using our platform, being a relatively big fish in a relatively small pond to impact the community. Back to your earlier question, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it truly is fantastic. I hope everyone in our audience can try and actually experience this because it really is extraordinary. And unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all my guests, this type of work, while incredibly rewarding, and you see this amazing impact that you have, but there's got to be some tough days where either trying to work on building a partnership or, you know, details relating to logistics of a festival like this. And just wondering, as an arts leader, are there any approaches or mechanisms that you have when faced with extraordinary obstacles or challenges?
I think always reminding yourself of what the mission is about. I'm a huge believer in going back to the mission. You know, we are a nonprofit. The goal of the institution is to fulfill its mission, and in our case, is to impact the lives of the people in our community in a positive way. So whenever there are tough decisions to be made, and I'm the one who has to make these decisions ultimately, you know, keeping in mind what the big picture is about. You know, it may be a really tough decision in the short term, but in the long term, you know that this is consistent with what you said your mission was and your values were. And, you know, easier said than done, but that's certainly a guiding principle for me.
André Gremillet, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much. You do for everything in the community, for the orchestra and beyond. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you for everything you do for our field. Thank you.